Welcome to Hard Hitters, the game of racquetball. I'm your host, Brant Spiewak. Racquetball is a sport that can be enjoyed by players both young and old, male and female, or anyone from all walks of life. Today, we will explore the many aspects of racquetball, including what it's all about, how you can get involved, and then we will get you out on the court learning all the fundamental basics that are needed to succeed in the sport of racquetball. Joining me in studio to my left, the esteemed Mr. Dan Hodges. Dan, what club are you playing out of today?
West Dallas.
West Dallas. Then Mr. Tom Griffith, Actalon ERA. Tom, welcome.
Hi.
The president of Wisconsin Racquetball, Mr. Paul Krieger. And then, at the other end of the table, Mr. Matt Mason. Matt, how you doing?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Gentlemen, if you could briefly talk about how you got involved with the sport of racquetball. I think that's important when we look at trying to attract new people into the sport. Dan, how'd you get into the sport?
I was about 12 years old, and my dad's like, Dan, I've been playing racquetball for a few years. Why don't you come with me and join me? So I'm like, sure. He gives me one of his old rackets, and I'm watching him a lot. And he's like, okay, Danny, let's go out here and start hitting the ball. And just when you're younger, you just kind of follow your dad's lead, and all of a sudden, if you like it, then you start, bugging him. Hey, Dad, let's go play racquetball again. I like this, And before you know it, we're playing a couple times a week. And
how old were you when this was all taking place?
12 years old when I started playing, and then every year you get a little bit better, but it's just kind of follow your dad's wings, and you just take it on from there if you like it.
Sure.
Well, I grew up in St. Louis, and St. Louis at the time in the 70s was a hotbed for racquetball. And my dad and one of my teachers in middle school had actually introduced me. My middle school teacher actually got me in a racquetball club, and I played in a couple tournaments. And then my dad was playing quite a bit, so very similar to Dan. I followed my dad's lead, and I was a tennis player too, so it wasn't a hard transition for me to make. So it was those really are the two people that started me.
Paul, I'm dying to know, how did you get brought into this sport?
Well, it's like a lot of other guys. Again, my dad as well played a lot, was a big time player. And so he'd go play at the club, he'd go play tournaments, he'd play leagues.
Now, what time frame are we talking about here?
This was mid-70s,
okay.
When I was about 8, 9, 10 years old. And he'd play leagues and tournaments, and I'd go and I'd hit the ball around, and when a court would open up, I'd run onto it and play for a minute or two till I got kicked off, so I was a little court rat. And just got very interested in it because he played it. And, of course, you always look up to your father, your mother, your parents, and he got me going, and started playing a little bit more and more, and then really picked it up when I was right after high school and college. Really picked it up working at the Brookfield Racquetball Club on pretty much 4 nights a week, and playing as often as I could play until my arm was falling off.
Matt?
Well, I started racquetball in college, actually.
Really?
Yep. It was one of the first times I'd ever really known what the game was.
How did you find it in college?
Well, we had a brand new facility that was just built, and they had brand new, beautiful racquetball courts with the whole glass back. So it was fascinating just watching people play. And so I got addicted to it really early on and started playing 2-3 hours a day. One point to the point where I actually had a muscle spasm that they were concerned, and they sent me to the ER. This is a true story.
Get out of here.
Absolutely.
You're kidding me.
They had an EKG, the whole thing.
Really?
Yep.
And obviously you made it past that.
I did.
And still playing the
okay.
sport today.
I love it.
That's good.
I almost loved it to death.
Okay, so let's start off today's discussion by exploring what the game of racquetball really is. We're playing in a 20 by 40 court. We've got 2 service lines that you need to stand between when you're serving. Then we've got a 5-foot dotted safety line. Tom, you want to talk a little bit about the meaning of that? I know you've done some study with the 5-foot line and its effect
and I
on the
teach
game.
quite a bit, and I've been called on it several times in tournaments. Is that the safety, the dotted or the hash marks that are 5 feet beyond the service line, basically it signifies the safety zone, and it's really designed to protect the server when they hit a shorter serve, because racquetball players are ungodly aggressive, and they will try to come up and take the ball as quickly as they can. The dotted line will keep them from doing that. If they cross that line before the ball either bounces or passes through that zone, they will lose the rally, and the server will get an automatic point. So it's really designed to protect the server. And so you know, it keeps us somewhat safe.
You know, now that I think about it, you mentioned the protection. I think you've hit me more than once. Possibly
I've hit
that
everybody
line.
in this room except Matt. I haven't played Matt yet, so I'm sure my signature's somewhere. Yeah.
Okay, so we've established the line and the lines and their purpose, and then we have the fact that you get one bounce when we're retrieving a ball. Let's talk a little bit about the serve, the objective of the serve. We go ahead and we put the ball in play. We have one bounce to return it. What are some of the things that could take us away from a volley or help us to lose a volley?
Well, I think the biggest thing is what you're trying to do is you're always trying to get your opponent on the defense, and you're always trying to be on the offense. And when you're serving, obviously it's an offensive position, so you're trying to get them off balance, trying to have them hit you a shot, either have them skip it or hit you a shot where you're in position to take an offensive shot. And I think the beautiful thing about racquetball as compared to some other sports is that it's hardly ever out. You can just swing as hard as you want. You can just wail on that ball, get a lot of stress out, hammer it, and you basically just have to get it to the front wall before it hits the floor. And so it makes it kind of a fun game, you know, whether you're just starting, whether you've been playing forever. It's something you can pick up really easy, get going on it, and you can kind of let loose. That was the one thing I didn't like about tennis growing up, because I started playing that too, is I was always hitting it out because I wanted to hit it as hard as I could. And I'm hitting it over the fence, and I'm hitting people in the head. And the beautiful thing about racquetball is you don't have to worry about that. You can just wail on it and run around and have fun.
I think you touched on something too, the fact that it's such a wonderful stress release. You know, when you get into the game and you really start focusing on crushing that ball, it melts the stress away. It really is a terrific game for that. Now let's head out onto the court and explore some helpful tips and tricks to playing and succeeding in the fine game of racquetball. Ad-lib a little bit. So let's talk some more about, we attempted.
You had mentioned something about a great stress reliever. If I haven't played for a couple of days or a couple of weeks, my wife just basically tells me, you probably just need to go play. And you know, and my kids do the same thing. So I think it's for me it's a haven, and it's a number of things. It's camaraderie, it's competition, and it's exercise. And you know, I played these two. I've played you. I haven't played Matt, but to me,
we need to do that, so.
Yeah. Well, we need to do that. So I'll come down there and we can play. But to me, it's a haven.
When you mentioned the stress reliever, I was thinking back to college again, and after finals, just going in and practicing and hitting the ball literally as hard as I possibly could, thinking of specific teachers or, you know, questions that were just not so fair, and really taking it out on the ball.
Yeah. Yeah, I think just to briefly cap off what you're talking about here, when you look at the potential for kids, you know, suffering cabin fever right now with everything going on with the weather and stuff, what a wonderful way to increase your hand-eye coordination, your agility, cross-training for other sports. You won't find a better sport than racquetball. You know,
it's huge. Hand-eye coordination, footwork, balance, agility. It is amazing when you look at, you know, what racquetball gives you for other sports. It's amazing. And you can play it forever, too. You can play it when you're 70, 80 years old.
Okay, now let's head out onto the court to explore some of the helpful tips and tricks to playing and succeeding in the sport of racquetball. Okay, so today what we're going to talk about are three primary shots. Three shots that are neglected by beginners in racquetball, but three shots that can really make a difference in approaching betterment in the sport. The three shots are a ceiling ball, which would be a defensive shot, a down the line pass shot, and then a pinch shot. Now it's important to understand with a pinch shot, there's really two types. There's a front wall, side wall pinch shot, and then a reverse pinch shot, which would be side wall, front wall. Today we're going to demonstrate those. And now, yes, it's time to explore one of the most exciting and efficient shots in fundamental racquetball, the pinch. Maybe one of the most important shots in racquetball, the ceiling ball. So in a ceiling ball situation, what's happening is the ball's typically outside of our power zone. That would be anything above our waist for most. So once the ball is coming back into this area here, we're going to go ahead and deploy the deadly ceiling ball shot. Again, we're trying to work the same lanes that we spoke about with our pass shot, except this time we're going to the ceiling. Now, not only is it important to realize when to hit the ceiling ball, but also to focus on the pace you're hitting the ceiling ball with. For just a moment here, I want you to imagine a coffin, what I call the coffin corner. That's in each of the corners, the respective forehand and backhand side. That's an imaginary box, roughly 4x4 or 5x5, right in this corner. That is where your ball should be landing on the second bounce, not on the first bounce, because we do not want to set somebody up with a ball carrying off the back wall to shoot. If you're playing a better player, that spells one thing, my friends: trouble. Okay, so we've covered now the 3 fundamental shots I want you to be thinking about as you approach the game. The next question is, when do we use those shots? That's a very, very important question. So I've got my good friend Scott here from Head Racket Sports to help illustrate what we're talking about. So let's examine the use of the pinch first. And again, my personal preference there is a reverse pinch, just because of some of the dynamics the shot represents. When we're going to approach a pinch shot, Scott's going to come up here a little bit towards this line. Scott's behind me now, okay? Rather than hit a shot back here that would allow him to get to it, I'm going to go ahead and hit the reverse and pinch when he's behind me. So that's the first fundamental rule. Use the pinch shot, ideally, when somebody's behind you. Now let's look at this. There's another. Okay, in this particular example, Scott's in front of me. So what we're going to go ahead and do now is utilize the pass shot. Now some basic things to keep in mind as you're approaching the pass shot. What we want to try to do when we hit a pass shot, we don't necessarily need to kill it. We want to keep our percentage as high as we can. So anywhere from 1 to 2 feet on the front wall is more than effective. What we want to try to do is hit the ball within this line and the side wall, which is roughly 3 feet. So if we can picture a channel going down either one of the lanes here, we call these the lanes, hit that shot within that parameter without kissing the side wall, you've in effect hit an effective pass shot. So Scott, let's demonstrate that now. So Scott's in front of me. I'm setting up for my shot. Ultimately, we want to control this space in the center. So we're always trying to move our opponent out of this center space and maintain control of the center space. When approaching the lob serve, there's two key things to be thinking about. One, the pace. Two, the placement. Ah, yes, the placement. So many people, when they get to the service box and serve, don't slow down enough to take the time to understand where that ball is going to end up after it comes off their racket. So we get up here, nice deep breath in through the nose, out through the mouth. We relax because this is the one time we know where the ball's going and he doesn't. So while we're focused on pace and positioning of the serve going to the back court, it's also important to understand where your partner's setting up to shoot the ball. It's critically important to understand where he's setting up to shoot the ball, because if he decides to hit a fast shot, that one split-second difference from you facing like this, not understanding where he's going with the shot, to you looking back and understanding where he's going with the shot can make all the difference in the world. The difference between hitting an offensive return or a defensive flail, just trying to get the ball back to the front wall. Okay, now form for just a basic forehand stroke. This is very important too. There's a couple fundamental things, not to overwhelm you with detail, but a couple fundamental things that are really, really important to think about as you're swinging a forehand. Number one, picture a linebacker in football. What you want to do is be down like this, nice and stable. A great test of that is you can have somebody come and try to push you over. If somebody can knock you over easy, you're not in the right form to hit a forehand. Now I'm going to go ahead and try to just do a forehand that we'll capture on film here, and you can see what I'm doing, and we'll slow it down for you so you can see the actual proper mechanics that take place during the course of this event. You'll notice in my swing, when I'm coming through, much like golf, for those of you that play golf, the whole body really is involved, okay? So I'm coming back, I'm loading up, bringing my elbow back, I'm twisting and putting the front shoulder down, and when I come through, it's like skipping a rock. If you've ever been to a pond and you skip a rock, same principle applies to a forehand. So you come through, you lead with that elbow, and then you follow through. I'll do that one more time. Okay, so those are some of the most fundamental skills that a racquetball player needs to have to succeed on the court. Now, let's take it a step further. Dan, you want to talk about the serve and the importance of it in the game. The
serve I like to use is the lob nick off the sidewall. I like to keep my opponent back in the court. You kind of touch base on that. From that spot, I kind of have a feeling where he's going with the serve, so I'm set up and I'm ready. And that's kind of the key is when you serve it, you want to know where he's going to put the ball so you can be in the best position to kill it or pass it beyond him. So
you're looking back too after you serve, right?
I'm glancing back. You know, I have a if he's cutting it off, I'm really just looking to see if he's cutting it off, you know, or if he's going to go ceiling. And if he's going ceiling, you don't really need to see that. You can react to that. But if he's cutting it off, you need to glance back and be ready for that. You know, I think for me, that lob nick, I know where they are. If I hit it good, he's not cutting it off. If I'm a little short, then he's just going to come in there and cut it off, and then I'm in trouble. Right. Then I got to mix it up.
Now, Tom, what about you're a little stealthy when it comes to serving, aren't you?
Yeah, I have a totally different attitude about it. I'm trying to be as deceptive as I can. I use more of what I call a cut drive serve, and I try to keep the ball in front of me before I hit it. A drive serve is something that's low and hard, and I try to keep the returner from seeing the ball until it gets beyond the service box. And I rely on deception. And in terms of, I try to use the same swing for putting it in the forehand corner or the backhand corner. And I try to make sure that, you know, it's deep in both those corners. Whereas Dan is much more, he is moving his serve up and down. I am moving mine more, you know, sideways. And so it both work. And Dan is more of a rally player. He gets into these rallies and he's in great physical shape, and he's very fast, and it plays well into his skills. And whereas I am trying to end a point as quickly as possible, where Dan will try to he'll run everything down. Well,
I think, you know, you bring up an interesting point too. When you look at the evolution of the sport, we went from 2 serves to a long period with 1 serve. I think the 1 serve period, if not anything else, it developed a lot of finesse approach, you know, to the service game. A lot of 3/4, a lot of different varied pace stuff that was higher percentage than going to drive serve. Paul, would you agree with something like that?
Oh, definitely. You know, you grew up, everybody played 2 serves. So you hammered your first serve, and then your second serve, you just got it in. And so you kind of got a little spoiled and just, you know, kind of forgot about mechanics and focus and all that. And then all of a sudden it got to 1 serve. And so unless you have a really good drive serve that is you can consistently get in without hitting short or long and losing your serve, you had to work on those more finesse shots, the nick lobs, the high lobs, the touch lobs, you know, down the lines. And so it definitely made people adjust their serving and focus more on it as opposed to just getting into a rally and going at it. And now that we're back at 2 serves again, I think a lot of people are just better because if their first serve is short or long, their second serve can still be pretty tough.
Matt, you have anything to weigh in there?
You know, it depends on who I'm playing, how I like to serve. If I'm usually one of the younger guys playing at the Y and
I remember that time when I was one of the younger guys, and
well,
it seems to.
I still am. I still am one of the younger guys. But so if they're older and a little slower, I do like to get them into a rally and start to wear them down. And but if they're younger or my age, I do love a good drive serve, and just to get the point going, make sure you get your points early on. And my whole philosophy is get as many points early on as possible to demoralize your opponent. Then you pretty much have them under control.
Demoralization.
Absolutely. Blitzkrieg.
Nice. Now, something I've not heard anyone mention yet, and something that I'm kind of partial to from time to time, the Z serve. Can you talk a little bit about the Z serve? Explain what it is, first of all.
The Z serve, if you were to look at it from the top of the court, if you were to look at it, the flight of the ball actually will look like a Z, the letter Z. And so it's used, again, as a deceptive serve. You know, if I'm playing Dan and I'm driving everything into his backhand, which is the left side, and then suddenly I hit a Z serve, which will hit the front wall, side wall, and bounce, and then hit the other side wall on his forehand side, theoretically it should come out parallel with the back wall, making it very difficult to swing at the ball. And so it's still a deceptive serve. It's not a drive serve in terms of how fast it is, but it is it's spinning around the court. And you know, most people are diving into the backhand court to retrieve drive serves, and suddenly you have something come up to the forehand side. And you can do it on the other side too, but for the most part, that's where you'll see me hit it.
So we've got a drive serve, we've got a lob serve, we've got a 3/4 serve, all these different serves. Where do you stand in the box to hit those serves, Dan? How do you decide that?
Well, you know, you got to vary it. You know, sometimes if you just hit the same lob serve or drive serve from the same spot, the guy's going to adjust and just crank up on it, and he knows it's coming.
Right. So
you got to, you know, I like to start in the middle, then I'll go a little bit left, and then come a little bit right of the middle. You really got to vary it. You know, sometimes if you want to go far right as you're looking at the front of the court, you can, but I think if you're in the middle is a good spot, and you just go a little bit either way so that you're in a good position when they return it. I mean, that's why you want to be close to the middle, so you're not chasing to get to the middle. That's what I like.
And important to be standing between those two lines. Foot fault. Paul, you want to describe what's happening in a foot fault scenario?
Oh, sure, yeah. Foot fault, if there's the front line and the back line, you're standing in the middle. The back line, you cannot have your foot over that line. Even if it is over just a hair, that's an automatic foot fault. It can be on the line but not over. Then when you hit your serve and you're driving into the ball, you can step on the line with your lead foot, But if you step completely over, that's also a foot fault. And what that does is, it might take a little power away from somebody who's really got a long stride and is striding over that line. But an important point of what Dan said too is, if you get too close to either wall, you're kind of taking some of your deception away, because you can't bring it down that wall because it's going to be a screen.
Yeah.
So if you're hitting a forehand drive serve, you can't be more, you've got to be at least 5 feet away from that front wall or from the side wall. And same thing on the backhand side. Okay. So usually the closer to the middle you are, the more you have an option of going either way. And if you're closer to one side, one wall or the other, you lose that drive serve ability because it's going to be a screen.
Paul, unfortunately, we are out of time for today. I'm sorry. I'd like to thank each of you for coming out here today. I know you've traveled that length to get here and you sacrificed some time with your family, so really, really appreciate you taking the time to come down. Matt,
Thanks.
It's a pleasure having your presence here as well. So for now, thank you for tuning in. We encourage you to go out and try the sport, and keep in mind, racquetball is a terrific game to try, a great stress relief and a great way to just go out and have some fun. For now, my name is Brant Spiewak. Good night and have a pleasant tomorrow.